Well, guys and gals, it's finally here. Episode 8 of The Acolyte, the finale. Can we expect anything better? Is this the one that we've been waiting for? I wouldn't bet my life on it. With the actual lack of content that's been in this show, this finale is actually just about 3 or 4 episodes too late. I entered this episode expecting so little. And what can I say? It did not disappoint. If I had to describe this episode, I'd say it was an unsatisfying end to an unsatisfying series. But then again, what can we actually expect from Disney Star Wars? The whole series has largely gone from bad to worse. In both just general quality and the writing. In particular, the writing has continued to religiously confound and confuse even the most attentive viewer with just how stupid it is. And part of me thinks that the writing becomes more problematic the further the series goes on, because they're building on incredibly shaky foundations which they themselves have set. And that rot seeps through to everything else they do. And what they're writing pretty much all of the time is crap. So you've got crap built on crap. It's no wonder the writing is so bad. Everything that happens in the series as a whole is so circumstantial that it can only be viewed as being contrived. The plot of the show doesn't move forward organically. It only moves forward because something is injected so they can move the story forward. And because these shifts feel so artificial, there's no build-up, there's no rationale, there's no reason that they're done. The whole series just janks towards its inevitable conclusion. And some of the finest examples of that are found in this finale. Reconciliations that happen in the space of moments, despite the fact that they were slugging each other literally seconds ago. Developments that don't make a lick of sense. There's even, once again, so many 180s in motivations and personalities that run not only completely against logic. I don't know why I said that. I mean, there isn't any logic in the show anyways. But it also runs in the face of what little we've actually learnt about the character so far as well. Now, as I've already hinted, the majority of the blame of this all lies in one place and one place alone. The writing. The story at best is a half idea. A half-baked story by unqualified writers. If it was actually given some time by competent writers who followed the basic building blocks of building a story, this show might have been passable. And I say passable to be polite, because I don't actually think that there's enough of a hook here for a story to be any more than that, even if they tried to develop it properly. Now, the story that we do have has been written and produced in such a way that it literally takes twice as long to tell than is necessary. There's so much dead space or completely pointless material that tells us nothing about anything. And the only way the whole story works is if you assume that all the characters are absolute morons. And by doing so, it then treats the audience like the audience is stupid. And then if that wasn't enough, it then goes ahead and assassinates everything that we understand from the Star Wars universe up to this point, specifically regarding the Jedi and what makes the Jedi the Jedi. This, at best, is a bad attempt at a flawed concept written and produced by absolute hacks who clearly lack the ability to make anything with more depth than a puddle. And I'd go further than that. I'd say the most damning indictment of this entire series is that the show, despite being way longer than it actually needs to be, does not even give us or explain or even give us the ability to infer any of the key information that they were trying to get across. Now, you may disagree with this, but I don't remember many, if any, other shows where the producer and writer has to go onto streams to provide additional context about an episode when that said context was never conveyed in the episode to begin with, or at the very least was so inaccessible to the vast majority of viewers that it might as well have not been there. But with that said, let's get stuck in. So we start the episode once again with Osha having the helmet on, but then something happens which causes her to go a bit weird, and Quimera basically has to use the Force to remove the helmet because of what's going on.
Miss May, she had her hand outstretched. She was killing souls. She had a saber in her hand, but she didn't use it.
This is the future you saw.
So it transpires that Osha was seeing the future, which is an ability that she's never displayed before, and it's an ability that she never displays again in the episode, and probably won't display again ever. From what you've just heard, that's going to be very important later on in the episode, just to display how absolutely fucking stupid the writers are. Now, one of the key points I would like to make about this seeing the future is that it's obvious that it is just a plot mechanism. The way they wrote this series in 8 episodes, needlessly, I might add, it leaves it in a situation where they haven't really got enough time to stitch this all back together. So clearly something has to happen, such as her developing the ability to see the future, in order to bring her and Quimera back into the Sol and May storyline so that we can have a conclusion. It just feels so mechanical. These things aren't happening. If this doesn't happen, the story doesn't move. The story ends here. I know some people will argue in every story you have moments like this, but it's all the bloody time. There's nothing which is a logical transition. It's all just like hammer blows, with no what's, why's, who's, where's, how's, or anything answered. So then the two of them have this weird discussion, where one of them has the means to go find May, and one of them knows where May is. And so they have some sort of like weird team-up moment, where they both agree to go where she is, and then part ways for each of them to pursue their individual aims. Although, we don't know what those aims are, because Quimera may well end up trying to kill May, or may well want to take her under his wing again as his apprentice, because he seems to have yo-yoed several times throughout the entire series so far that you genuinely don't know what's going on. And with Osha was left on the planet by her sister, therefore should be incredibly pissed off. But at so many points, she's had the ability to deal with her sister, and the fact that she's been told her entire life that her sister blew up their home and killed all her family, and she does nothing about it. Now, there comes a point where, in a good thriller, you would expect to be kept on the edge of your seat and not knowing what was going to happen because of good writing. The problem here is that we don't know what is possibly going to happen, and we don't know the motivations of characters for the very simple reason that they're all so indecisive. They all keep changing their mind. Every character has had ample 180s where they've completely changed their motivations, their characters, sometimes even their personalities. It's just crap.
Why did you blame it on me?
You started that fire. You locked everyone in.
Because the Jedi invaded our home. Everyone in there died because of the 4 of you.
The writers definitely missed a trick here. This could have been the opportunity for a character growth moment, where May comes to terms with her responsibility in the death of everyone. But instead, they just continue down this track of having her blame everyone else for what is clearly her fault. Now, we saw what happened, and the Jedi did nothing wrong apart from them trying to cover it up, which isn't something that the Jedi would have done. And we are using Jedi as a very wide term at this point, because with how emotional Sol is about everything, he is not fit to be a Jedi. Torben was not fit to be a Jedi, and yet they were Jedis. And this will be more important later on in the episode. All of this blaming the Jedi is just to try to suggest that the Jedi are immoral, or that they're the bad guys of this whole situation, when they're not. The real reason that the witches died is because at every single point they were the aggressors. And Saul did kill her mother, but he killed her mother out of the best intentions. She turned into a smoke demon. I would kill it. But it also seemed to be drawing from May, which as far as he knew, could have been some sort of sacrifice. It could have been basically her being absorbed or deleted or whatever. So he acted to protect May, who he thought was Osha. And yes, her mother died. He didn't understand, but it was done out of the best of intention. The only person here who acted completely with malicious intent was May. And this is the problem with Disney and the writers of this show. It's the amount of moral ambiguity that they put into their shows, where you end up rooting for the person that you're not supposed to root for. In some shows that they've produced, you root for the bad guy, because the bad guy isn't bad. He's acting logically. And in this show, you're not supposed to root for the Jedi, who are traditionally the good guys, and yet you are. Because they can't convey the Jedi as actually having done anything wrong, because they're incompetent. But if we look at why she is the malicious person in this scenario, she blamed the Jedi that the lift was disabled because they invaded her home. They didn't invade the home. They came in, they introduced themselves, and they left, despite having been attacked. Then they disabled the lift, locking everyone inside. Then she sets the fire, but before she sets the fire, when Torben comes and goes, I can't get in, Saul reaches out with the Force to make sure that Osha is alright. And he hears, through the Force, that she's locked up and she can't go anywhere, and she's basically being held against her will. So then they come up, and again, they do not act with aggressive intent. Meanwhile, May sets the fire, which somehow blows up the generator, because it travelled through the wires. Not quite how fire works, but okay. And then we go back to the Jedi, and it's the horny mother who basically is trying to attack the Jedi. So at no point can the Jedi be blamed for this. If anything, she should be flattered that Saul was acting out of a desire to protect her and her sister. The sorts of mental gymnastics that you have to do to even suggest that the Jedi are bad here is absolutely insane. But anyways, while we're having this conversation, she picks up her pip droid, who instantly knows that it needs to have a lock-picking mechanism to unlock the cuff, despite not being told to do that. I mean, you know. So she escapes. And rather than keep running after her, he stops to yell her name. If he'd have kept running, he would have probably got there. So anyways, May escapes in a ship, and flies into an asteroid field. Saul, realising what she's doing, just decides to plough his ship straight into it as well. Which, I mean, have they not seen any of the other Star Wars films? Like, I know this isn't a full-blown asteroid field, but any one of those little specks, if it gets through the deflectors, will go straight through the ship. What the absolute? Why? Another 180. So Basil, literally 2 episodes ago, stamped on her foot and was willing to fight her. And now, clearly Saul's planning to wing the ship so that he can catch up with her and basically take her back. So then Basil comes in and just starts howking out cables in order to stop him from shooting. Why? What's the motivation here? I don't understand. It's just designed that this has to happen for the next thing to happen, but it doesn't take into consideration anything that any of the characters have done before. So then Basil runs away like a little turd. And ultimately ends up wiping out the ship anyways.
Brace yourself, Pip!
You've had this pip droid for minutes. And you're telling it to brace itself. If this was Osha and her pip droid, you could probably understand, because there would be potentially a length of time where an emotive response could build between the two. Well, not between a robot and a human, but between the human and the robot, she's had this for such a short time that she shouldn't care if it gets blown up or anything stupid. It doesn't make sense. It's almost as if the writers didn't know which character was in this ship. Now, I know I shouldn't really care, but just another crash where she'll come off with absolutely no injuries at all. So, we meet this arsewipe of a senator who is investigating the Jedi. I mean, at this point, you kind of hope he does investigate the Jedi because they're all absolutely useless. But basically, not a lot happens here. He knows that a Jedi's involved in murdering people or some crap.
How is your stomach?
But then there's another quip about how she shits herself when she jumps to light speed. Disney. And again, I just have to say I am so impressed at this actress's lack of emotional range and acting ability. I mean, yeah, she's basically a brick. But you can say that about most of the actors in this show. So I'm trying my hardest to keep my feelings about this scene under wraps, at least for the most part. So I'm going to really try not to say anything other than, so now she's the leader, and she's leading Quimir to the ship, not the other way around, because basically he's now just her little bitch. But just look at her attire, and we'll come on to this shortly. And that is Darth Plagueis. So what we're going to be led to believe, obviously how this story sits in the entire Star Wars universe, is that Main Osha and what the Witches were doing is something that he's going to look into and mess with, which is ultimately going to force the Force to make Anakin. It's just crap. Things that didn't need to be linked, didn't need to be explained from a show that didn't need to exist. So now they're both on Brendok, but Saul decides to put his transponder back on. Well, why turn it off in the first place, you absolute fucking idiot? If you're always going to turn yourself in and explain what happened, which was what we were led to believe in episode 6, then why did you turn off the transponder if now you've got to Brendok, you're just turning on the transponder? You'd have been better off just hanging about when the Jedi jumped in literally a second after you left, and handing yourself in then, and then we'd have saved all of this shit. And why leave Basil on the ship? But at this point, you know he's a traitorous little rat. So anyways, Osha and the Sith arrive on the planet. Saul's wandering around looking for May, in a place that realistically exploded and is in surprisingly good nick considering it literally should be in pieces. And he's hearing echoes of what happened. Whether it's a memory or an echo, who knows at this point.
Is the only way in. Unless you want to climb.
Are you sure?
So are we supposed to believe that Quimir just teleported inside? Or does he have the ability to turn into a smoke demon? Is that a new Sith ability that they're basically just throwing out there? No fucking way. Absolutely no fucking way. So we're supposed to believe that she got the power to the lift working, despite the fact that the Jedi, when they arrived 16 years ago, in order to potentially save them, couldn't get the lift working. When there was a working generator, you have to remember, there's no generator in this base anymore. There's no power. It blew up. So how was this even possible? Well, they ripped that straight out of the Matrix. The one thing I will say, and I will give them credit here, this is the best lightsaber sequence of actual competent fighting. I'm pretty sure that Sol, or rather the actor who plays him, is actually older than Rosario Dawson. And he is infinitely better and more believable than her as Ashoka.
I could never learn to calm my negative emotions. My hatred of you, my grief over our mother. So I never became a Jedi.
So she could not become a Jedi because she could not calm negative emotions. And we saw in episode 7 that both Torben, who was a Jedi Master before he died, was unable to calm his negative emotions when he was a Padawan. And Master Sol can't even now calm his negative emotions and wasn't able to then and is somehow a Jedi Master. This is just pure crap and just goes to show that the writers understand what makes a Jedi and how a Jedi would become a Jedi, and how Osha was not allowed to be a Jedi is the exact same reason why Torben and Sol would not have become Jedi. And yet we're supposed to believe that they did become Jedi and she did not. It's just crap. So anyways, after the little revelation where May tries to tell Osha that Sol killed their mother, basically they have a scrap. So Sol disarms Quimir by striking through his lightsaber and effectively has him at his mercy. Realistically, he should kill him because he's a threat. Quimir knows the Force. The Force can be used as a weapon. Therefore, he's a threat. But he doesn't. He just stands around for several seconds in order for the next thing to happen because, you know, plot, 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 plot. So obviously May disarms Sol, but refuses to kill him. So, quelle surprise, it's not May that Osha saw. So as you can probably guess, it's Osha. So Sol confesses that he killed their mother, but Osha's in the background, listening in. So comes out and asks, is that true? Clutching the lightsaber in hand. So she starts to basically force choke Sol. And this is where, for me, one of the great and utterly diabolical writing points come in. So she saw the future. She saw this happening. So surely she should have seen that when she was killing Sol and believing that it was May killing Sol, that she was dressed like this, or that May was actually in the background. But even at this point, surely the realization would come that what she saw was the future for her, not the future for May. It just doesn't make sense. But they thought that that was a clever twist to try to confound the viewer. But it doesn't. It just doesn't work. Because Osha would know that the moment that she put on those black clothes, she'd look down and go, oh shit, it's me that kills Sol. Like, what? Now, the problem with this is she's bled the Kyber crystal. But this isn't something that takes seconds. It takes time. And it usually takes a focused stream of negative emotions into the crystal to corrupt it. And quite often, the crystal itself will resist the corruption. So it's not something that would happen in such a short space of time. But again, they need to show that she's gone dark side. And the interesting thing here is, I called this 3 episodes ago. I said that they're gonna do the usual twin trope, where if one's evil and one's good, they role reverse before the end of the series. So the good one is now evil, and by the end of the episode, the evil one will be good. That also is not how it would happen. The crystal is red, therefore it would just be red. Otherwise, every single time that you turned a lightsaber on, it would start as blue and then corrupt to red. So that was just artistic license. If you can't tell, I'm actually starting to seethe with rage myself. So the Jedi arrive, and she knows Quimir. So that's interesting. I mean, that was one of the early theories, that basically he would be her apprentice. Kinda sad it's not the horny mama, but it is what it is. I mean, the fact that pretty much every twist in this show people have guessed very accurately, really early on in the show, is just a testament to just how transparent the writing is. Now, this raises an interesting point that I didn't think about earlier in the episode. So, if the lift was deactivated from the inside and the Jedi were not able to use the lift, then how did Osha reactivate the lift now to go up in the first place? And if she was able to reactivate the lift just by reconnecting 2 cables, which seems moronic, to say the least, seeing as there's no generator, but we've covered that, then why were Sol and Torben not just able to do the same and then come up via the lift? Or more so, why weren't they just able to use force powers like she just did to open the door to the lift? Again, the contrivances here are horrendous. So the Jedi arrive into the monastery, or whatever the hell we're going to call it, and they start hearing the echoes of everything that's happened. So pretty quickly they understand what has gone on. But while they're stood around here, all of them, because no one thought to, like, keep a perimeter or anything like that, the sisters are running away.
The rest of you set up a 5-click perimeter. Use the tracker.
I can't convey this into words. I just can't. My mind is blown. It's completely shot by the stupidity of this show. This is not a perimeter. You set a perimeter, and then you have some guys basically maybe using the tracker. Instead, we've got every Jedi here now using the tracker to go hunt them down. But they were told to create a perimeter. And also, I hate to say this, there's about 20 guys total, and they're telling them to create a 5-kilometer perimeter. That's the definition of stupidity. 5 kilometers out from a single point. With that number of people, a 5-kilometer perimeter would give you an over 30-kilometer circumference. Meaning that with the number of guys that they would have, they'd have less than one guy for every kilometer. So that isn't going to work. But so why even say it? Why not just say, take the tracker and hunt them down? The level of absolute fucking stupidity in this show, they've clearly took concepts from a modern day real life law enforcement and then slammed it into Star Wars without any of the tools or actual recognition of what those things mean in practice. They're absolute morons. I know that I've spoken with a few people in the comment sections of the previous videos about the Vergence and what it is, and there's a reasonable chance that the Vergence is actually this tree, or the hole in the ground, or maybe they're both Vergences. I mean, does anyone know? It's probably never going to come up again, but it also raises another interesting point that I didn't think. So, they had Darth Plagueis on the planet where Quimir is, so is he going to follow them here and then do his research here at the Vergence and then use that as the focal point to mess around with the Force, which then causes the Force to create Anakin? Probably. That's probably what they're thinking. Because obviously everything has to be linked to their vanity project, and this is just a vanity project. So after they were fighting 5 minutes ago, and she blamed her for blowing up their home, which she did, she still killed an absolute shit ton of the witches, and from Osha's point of view, she tried to burn her alive. She set fire to the door that led to the room that she was locked in. She had to escape through a secret tunnel. She forgets all of this, and in the space of minutes, she's buddy-buddy, they're the best of friends, best of sisters. So anyways, while they're having this little bit of a heart-to-heart that makes absolutely zero sense, Quimir turns up, Osha agrees to become his apprentice, and now goes full dark side. May refuses to go with her, so Quimir wipes her mind, and she gets picked up by the Jedi. So then May gets told all of the information as to how her family died, and then gets told that she's got a sister that she has no recollection of, because obviously her mind's been wiped. So then, once again, the Jedi are shown to be covering things up, and they basically pin everything on Master Sol, because obviously she doesn't want anyone to know that it's actually her Padawan who is the Sith. And this is how they explain away the Sith haven't been seen for 1,000 years, because basically the Jedi just covered it all up. And this is what the writers were looking to do. The writers were once again wanting to show that the Jedi are ultimately responsible for their own downfall. That the establishment itself caused the rot which brought down the establishment. And it's just political messaging that they're wanting to push through the medium of Star Wars. But of course, that isn't the reason why the Jedi fell. The Jedi fell because Darth Sidious cloaked himself using the Force so that the Jedi couldn't know that there was a dark side user so close to them until it was too late. So it had nothing to do with the hubris of the Jedi or anything like that. It had everything to do with the ingenuity and the plans of Darth Sidious.
Who?
A pupil of mine. Before he turned to evil.
I mean, fuck me, the acting here. It would put someone who was in a coma to sleep. It's just dismal. But, yeah, this pretty much completes the circle. You know, exactly what I said. Evil twin goes good, good twin goes evil. Like, if that's their idea of a twist, you know what it is? The entirety of Star Wars at the moment leaves you wanting more. Any single fan, I truly believe that every single fan could write something better than this. Get several fans together and you'd actually write something that was incredible. But instead, there's this hiring practice of hiring people who don't even like the content that they're writing about or have no experience in the content. They never watched it. And that in itself is a crime. Because anyone who was writing Star Wars should be made to read all of the extended universe. Even though it's not in there, they should be made to read it so they can get an understanding of what the fans think. And then they should be made to watch all 9 films, even the new trilogy, which is crap, and/or I wouldn't wish Solo on anyone, so we'll ignore that. And then I wouldn't watch any of the other series as well, because they suffer from the same problems. But they should at least be made to do that and read the books to understand what happens and why. But they don't. Disney specifically hires people who don't have a vested interest in the property. But by doing so, you have people that don't care about what came before. They only care about pushing their own agenda, of writing from their experience, rather than as if it made sense in the universe. And that is the fundamental problem with the writing on almost every IP today.
Sorry to disturb you, Master. We need to talk.
And obviously the inclusion of Yoda is supposed to be a little Easter egg to the fans, but it's just a giant fuck you. Because we can assume that she's going to tell Yoda that there's a dark side user and it's her Padawan. And if that's the case, it means that Yoda is now involved in the lie, thus finishing the institutional corruption that is in the Jedi and their ultimate message. But also, it means that Yoda shouldn't be surprised that there's Sith kicking about in the prequels. So all of the damage that fans said they had done with Ki-Adi-Mundi, they've now just doubled down on with Yoda, if this goes the way I would expect. Now, I'll be honest, this is to leave it open for a season 2. This does not deserve a season 2. I mean, don't get me wrong, if it gets a season 2, I'll review it. But it doesn't deserve a season 2. Because there's nothing that they can do to save this now. It's much the same as Halo, in that season 1 was bad. But when you build on something that is bad, it almost never gets better. And Halo didn't. Season 2 is worse than Season 1 as far as I'm concerned. And if they do a Season 2 here and continue it down this track, the damage that they might actually do to Star Wars will be irreparable. Because it is much easier to ignore something which came after the thing that you loved than something that literally feeds into the thing that you love. So these shows are irreparably damaging the prequels, which then impacts the OT. And, I mean, let's face it, almost no one cares about anything that came after anyways. But that damage will come at a cost. And that cost will probably be, I mean, if you don't agree that it's already dead, the death of Star Wars as an IP. Because it's already clearly apparent that no one cares about Star Wars. A significant amount of apathy directed at Star Wars. And the casuals have stopped caring. Even what the people I would consider as fans have started treating Star Wars as more a whipping boy. Most of the views that this series will have been hate views. They will have been people watching to see how bad it is, not tuning in to see how good it is. And I think that is testament to Disney's ownership of Star Wars. But yeah, I guess that's a wrap. And I'll be honest, I actually couldn't be happier. I can't help but think that if this does get a season 2, as it's clearly setting up for, Disney's just burning their money. I mean, Disney was burning money with this one. How it cost 180 million? It's just shit. Now, I'm going to say something really bad here, but I'd sooner watch season 1 of Ashoka, Obi-Wan, and Boba Fett again, all 3 series, than watch this one series. And that's not because they're good, because they're not. They're actually really crap. But this is different level. And this actually just serves to confuse and confound more than entertain. Like, I know there'll be people out there, there'll be YouTubers out there who watched this and basically pissed themselves laughing. I couldn't even do that with this one. Ashoka, I pissed myself laughing. I mean, it was fantastic. But this, I couldn't. It's just sad. And I think that the fandom just has to face facts. When writers are allowed to take ideas like this and turn it into a half-baked show, then Star Wars can never be saved. At this point, you're looking at probably 2 or 3 independent series or even independent films being colossal hits to even try to resuscitate Star Wars at this point. And the best thing that Disney could do is blank slate it. Eradicate the Rey trilogy. Eradicate everything they've produced series-wise. Eradicate Solo from existence. Just basically do a Willow on the lot. Remove it from ever having existed. And start fresh with competent writers, if such a thing exists in Disney's vocabulary. If they don't have those hits, or do a reset, we just have to accept that Star Wars is officially dead. And that every Star Wars series that they bring out, with the exception of Andor, which I am actually looking forward to, but that's because Season 1 was competently written, is essentially just meme material. But, what are your thoughts? As always, let me know below in the comments section. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like and smash that subscribe button. But with that said, that's it from me, so that's it for you.